God, that was so fun. 4 hours in Crater with 40 people, and we gave out so many L's. But it's getting kinda late. It'd be a good idea for me to log here. Gosh, it's so dark in here. It's kinda creepy. Oh well, that's never stopped me before.
Silence.
Whoa, who's that? I'll have you know I'm a T-Rex, you know. I'll mess you up.
You will kneel or cease to be.
Oh, okay. Just this once. I don't want any trouble. I'm low health, and I'm alone. I just...
You wish to wither.
No, I just want to log.
Leave.
Okay, I'll leave. This is yours. This is your spot. God, that was a close one. You really don't want to die right before logging off. Imagine if I spawned in Ripple Beach.
Hello. So today is very much a different kind of video compared to anything else I really make, really. I ended up getting asked before we ended up getting the whole update, and I know everyone is excited about the Rex TLC right now. Me personally, I'm just not an Apex player, so I just decided, why not make the Rhamph guide that people have been asking me to make since before the update. And, well, I had a bit of spare time today, so here we go. I've gone over all of the parts of Rhamphorinkus that I found were the most important to actually go over and actually explain. Timestamps will also be in the description for whatever, part of the playable that you care about learning. I hope it helps, and I hope you all enjoy. So Rhamphorinkus is a purely offense-based support creature, making strong players stronger without really providing much to anybody who is more inexperienced at the game. Along with then just being a nuisance or a hindrance to anybody who dares cross them. Equipped with a vast array of tools and skills to make this one playable that is vastly underestimated be the cause of all your pain and suffering in this game. And due to the amount of requests that I've received, let's go over the different tools that Rhamphorinkus has in order to get the most out of it. So Rhamphorinkus is a hypermobile debuffing and buffing playable, which is hard to hit and even harder to kill 90% of the time. Being hard to hit is the fact that it is so small, so mobile in flight, and quite hard to spot and keep track of in the middle of a fight especially. But as for being hard to kill, that would be down to its passive called Lucky Feather, in which Lucky Feather is an intrinsic passive exclusive only to Rhamphorinkus and Deinonychus. You can survive one fatal attack if you have more than 40% health. It will restore some health and stamina and grants 10 seconds of immunity to all damage. While immune, you cannot deal any damage, can only activate once every 5 minutes. Allowing you to continue on buffing your teammates or debuffing enemies for those 10 seconds that you spend while immune to any extra damage after you've been hit by a fatal attack.
Go on, bite your Meg.
Knowing that you can survive one fatal blow, you can really use this to bait out a lot of friendly fire for people who don't anticipate that you'll just sit there tanking it.
Meg took an absolute beating, but now I'm kind of out of the game for 4 minutes.
Wait, 4 minutes on Lucky Feather? But I thought it was 5 minutes. Well, you can give props, to this 4-minute cooldown towards the subspecies on Rhamphorinkus called Longicaudus, which grants Rhamphorinkus a 25% faster cooldown on everything that it has. Whether that be applying buffs to your friends, applying buffs to enemies faster due to the shorter cooldown, or hell, even mobility abilities that Rhamph can use. There's quite a lot of playables in the game that actually can't one-shot you, such as 1 or 2 slots, and the occasional 3 slots, such as a killer using its basic bite. Hell, not even Pycno one-shots you with its basic bite, in which actually being around half health with Rhamph is actually safer than being at full health, for quite a lot of the roster. Since even if those attacks wouldn't generally kill you from full health, they'll definitely kill you from half health, which will activate your Lucky Feather, allowing you to avoid a death. But now on to the next part about Lucky Feather. If your Lucky Feather has been activated and is on cooldown, and you go into the fight and die, do not be surprised. This was your choice to go into the fight and try to do something when you are not in the position to actually do something. Horrible example, I know, seeing as they practically hit me with Bluetooth right here. But hey, my point still stands. I should not have gone in. And now on to the next section about Rhamph, mobility. Rhamph is the most agile flyer, though this does not equate to being the fastest flyer. In a top speed, it is still slower than a Hatzegoptrix and Thalassodromeus, though it is able to turn and change direction in flight way better than the other flyers. Along with then also being an extremely good swimmer, being able to evade Hatzegoptrix that actually chase it towards an area with water, or can swim faster than a Thalassodromeus that decides to follow it into the water, along with then regenerating stamina faster than the two of them combined. You can do this by just, slow swimming at the surface of the water to regenerate your stamina if you like. But when it comes down to trying to be fast with Rhamph in terms of its flight, this mainly comes down to 2 parts, or 2 abilities that it has, in which one of them is called Dart. A rapid dart forward in both air and water can catch fish or critters but deals no damage. When they say catch critters, no, it'll do damage to critters but it won't catch them per se. Though you can use it to actually catch fish. But then the other side to your fast flight is actually the ability Pounce, which is what you generally use to either buff your teammates or debuff your targets.
How are you doing, Mr. X?
Now the cool thing about Pounce is that it actually carries the momentum that you had when you used it.
No.
So in other words, you can use this to actually cover a lot of distance, depending on how fast you were going when you used it. So combining the speed you get from Dart with then a Pounce to cover a bunch of distance will also save you the stamina you would have spent from actually flying that distance. And there's also another funny little thing you can do with Pounce, that it practically allows you to just fall straight to the ground without taking any damage whatsoever. So long as the servers are in your favor and you don't glitch out and instantly teleport to the floor, breaking your legs. So if you actually want to maximize the amount of distance you can get here, what you do is you do a dive down until you think you're at top speed from diving. Then when you pull up out of the dive, you use your Dart ability. And then when you think you're pretty much at max speed from Dart, then you use your Pounce. And the momentum you put into that Pounce from the speed beforehand is what will carry you all of that distance. This is pretty much how I always travel super quickly. In, respective for Rhamph, since the other flyers are still faster, what can I say? But in respect of, being able to actually control the agility and try and be precise with Rhamph, this purely comes down to practice. And the only thing I could say for you to practice is try hunting down alpha critters and try to avoid touching the ground. Just fly at them, bite them, but try and make sure that they don't actually bite you back. this may sound pointless to do, but I gotta say, I actually find it pretty damn fun. As well as, you know, being decent practice. Now, give me a second here. And now on to the next part that I want to go over. Buffing your teammates. Now, there's not many buffs that you can give to your teammates, so let's go over the easiest one to do first. Which you'll probably also see most Rhamphs using, which is Plotting Whispers. It increases the attack damage of a pounced creature by 20% for 20 seconds, can only be used while latched, and persists after unlatching. Quite self-explanatory, it buffs the damage of whatever you use it on and have pounced to. But notice how it says, a pounced creature. Not, you know, any carnivore or group member, just a pounced creature, which means it also works on herbivores despite being a carnivore. This thing can just buff up anything it wants, so it can either be your best friend or your greatest enemy. In terms of when you use it, I would say right before a teammate is about to go in, or is maybe being chased, or perhaps, you know, if you're able to find an opportunity in the middle of a fight, you could possibly use it. It is completely situational of when you want to actually try and apply the buff.
It's just so many. It's just all Apex.
And then we have the other side of buffing, from which Rhamph can also do, which comes from its ability Fishy Breath, which applies your most recent buff acquired from eating a fish to all creatures in your group within 50 meters, cannot be used while diving, only usable while in a group. And I've got to say, I mean, there's not many super useful fish buffs. The most useful ones that I've seen really are Pike, which give you a 20% extra stamina regen, and then also Arapaima or Catfish, which will give you 20%, you know, health regen, out of combat of course, along with a 20% bleed heal rate. If possible, I would say try to keep these buffs on your teammates as much as you can, but hey, you know, it's the case that you've actually got to try and find the fish, and sometimes in the rivers or the ponds or wherever you usually find fish, well, that's not always going to be possible, just due to how this game is in terms of, you know, AI spawns. Along with the competition that, hey, there might be someone else in the river that is also eating all the fish, so it's kind of a case that if you're lucky to be able to find them, then they're pretty good buffs to give to your teammates. If you can't find them, well, that just means that you're going to have to search elsewhere to find the fish, you know, in the spots where you remember them spawning. According to, you know, what kind of buffs you actually want. I would say the most useful one, though, is 100% the Pike, which gives you the 20% stamina regen. Though you could also choose the 5% armor that come from eating turtles to give to your team, but that's up to you. At base, the cooldown on Fishy Breath is 10 minutes, which is the same amount of time as, you know, how long a fish buff lasts in the first place, which is cool in the reference of Rhamph since it has the Longicaudus subspecies, which reduces the cooldown of everything on Rhamph, meaning that you can technically have two buffs on a teammate at the same time. Now, something that I like to do is I will take a bite out of whatever fish that I want to use. I will carry it with me following whichever teammate I'm with. I will then drop the fish, give them a buff, and then just eat the fish again, so that when the ability comes off of cooldown, I can just buff them again. And thanks to my subspecies, I know that once Fishy Breath comes off of cooldown for me, that means that whoever I have buffed with Fishy Breath in the first place has another 2 minutes of the buff at least. But hey, if you have multiple Rhamph in a group, well, you can get quite a lot of buffs if you want. Now I think it's time we actually get on to the debuffs that you can apply to enemies. First starting with Bloodsucker.
Oh, negative.
Now, Bloodsucker is a bite that returns 20% health to the Rhamph on each hit. Each bite also applies 1 stack of blood loss to the target. Reaching 5 stacks of blood loss on a target applies a woozy effect, which reduces the target's turn speed by 50% for 10 seconds, and is only usable while latched, or pounced to a target, should I say. Now, to be honest, it's not the most useful ability in a fight, as it would require way too much communication to get true value out of it. Its main purpose is pretty much just to heal the Rhamph whenever you need to do so.
Yeah.
But in the case of the turn reduction, my friend Terra here is turning as sharp as she can on her adolescent Rex with the woozy effect stacked up fully there. It's very significant, and can help in a fight, especially if someone, is trying to tail ride or whatever like that. It'll give you a chance to actually get behind them, or just, get them out of position. But to get true value out of it in a fight would require a lot of communication and good timing. Now for what I would say is the best debuff you can apply to an enemy, especially if you are teamed up with someone who deals bleed damage. Which, obviously, is gotta be Scab Picker. A peck that reduces the target's bleed heal rate by 10% for 20 seconds, stacks up to 5 times, must be pounced onto a target to use, deals no direct damage. Same as everything else on Rhamph. So, 10%, stacks up to 5 times. In other words, you can cut any target's bleed healing in half. And after you think that you've stacked it up to 5 stacks, all you gotta do is hop on at least once every 20 seconds, and then hit one more Scab Picker, and just keep them bleeding. And whoever you are playing with that dealt the bleed damage in the first place, they can just keep their distance, and just watch as their target slowly ticks down to death. You can use opportunities like people trying to rest off their bleed to pounce them, add some more stacks of Scab Picker, then fly off. Though, when using Scab Picker, this requires whoever's playing Rhamph to pay attention to who's taking all the bleed, and to make sure that they don't get a chance to rest. Along with, just trying to keep as many people stacked up as possible. And as I said, usually a lot of the time, they will try and sit down on you, but you just hop off, jump back on, and keep it stacked until they eventually die. How about another example right here? There's a Spino out in Grand Plains, about to walk into Crater. I've told Morcrom, hey look, food, Spino out here. You wanna eat it? And he goes, yeah. So, I lead him over to where the Spino is. He goes and deals a bunch of bleed and damage or whatever to it. I go and cut its bleed healing in half, and Morcrom is able to take it easy. As it's slowly ticking down, it's kind of just forced to stay still and stop moving, or else it'll just bleed to death. Not that it would be able to get away from a Tyrannotitan in the first place, but it kind of leaves it open just to be finished off, because it isn't able to move without just bleeding out to death, thanks to it having a very reduced bleed heal rate. So how about another example? So, Morcrom finds 2 Dasps. He ends up chasing one of the Dasps, but the other one ended up DCing from the server. And so he kind of just left it alone. So one of the Dasps ended up running off, and they tried to sit down, because I guess maybe they spent a lot of stamina beforehand. It ends up trying to run off even further, but I tried to do a little body block by trying to get under its feet, and they kind of get a little low on stamina, and they take a bunch of hits from Morcrom. But this is where the other Dasp ends up coming back, and so Morcrom goes after that other Dasp anyway. Which is where I keep going after this Dasp, since I can see that, well, it's got death scars, and it's been hit a bunch of times by Morcrom. and I keep it from resting, and I stack it up with Scab Picker. And eventually, well, it's kind of obvious, right? Yeah. Bleed heal reduction is very strong. And now for the main thing that everyone thinks about when they see Rhamph. Plague. Which comes from its passive, Plague Carrier. While latched onto another creature not in your group, apply a debuff that causes 20% reduced bleed, stamina, and health recovery, and increases food and water drain by 5 times. This effect spreads to any nearby creatures within 50 meters not in your group, can also be used solo, and grants immunity to plague effects. This right here is one of the biggest contributors to the Rhamph population right now, since Plague Carrier, you see the little increased food and water drain down there, right there? Right now it says 5 times, that used to be by 2 times. Meaning that if you spent 12 minutes pounced to a Rex or a Tyrannotitan, they start starving to death, they start taking health damage from starvation. I've seen a lot of people complain about it. A lot of people complain about it, and I always assume the same thing. These are people who don't want to move to go get food or water. They'd rather just sit in one spot. And, well, anybody who's watched my channel for long enough knows exactly the exact spot I'm talking about. It's the crater. But as for this passive in what it can do from this damageless playable, you can really just push people to go and actually search for food instead of just sitting in one spot. Either that, or a lot of the time, they just log out on you. Because, well, you can't stop them from logging out, so yeah, either way, it really puts a lot of pressure on the people you try to use it on. It's most effective on any apexes. Obviously, it's the case that every minute you spend on someone counts as 5 minutes of their hunger bar. And in the context of a Rex, let's just say you can stay on its side with it bucking the entire time for about 20 seconds. And what you'll end up getting out of that is 1 minute and 40 seconds of its food and water bar, or levels, or gauge. And remember, that's not just towards that one Rex, that's towards the other carnivores, who are most likely apexes, since this, this update is pretty much the apex update right now, since Rex is so damn popular. Yeah, they all need quite a lot of food. And they all got pretty big tummies that are going to take quite a lot of meat to fill, and they're going to have to go hunting. And one body is not going to be enough for any of them, so they're going to have to take more risks in going for more group fights instead of, ganking. I didn't mean to sound sarcastic or, demeaning with that, but you get what I'm saying, right? They're going to have to take more risks and actually go for more group fights to secure their meal. Otherwise, they'll be pretty much eating each other's food and leaving each other hungry, while I'm still working on starving them out slowly. I don't think there's anything else I really need to explain to you about Plague. I think you get it. Rhamph hops on, things get hungry, and things panic a little.
Okay, this Titan's running back down to crater.
And so here we are at the end. I'm trying to be a little bit quiet right now because people are sleeping and, don't want to be waking them up, right? And this was quite the different kind of video compared to what I usually make, right? It's usually more story-based. And, well, guides are not really my thing, but I tried my best for this, and anybody who does understand what I'm trying to get at with Rhamph and decides to give it a try and put what I've said into action, well, I hope you find success with it. I know that everyone's really mainly just excited about the you know, the T-Rex TLC, and from what I've heard, and I have tried it out a little bit, it's way better than before, in my opinion, to deal with, and, you know, from what I've tried of it, a little more to play as well. But, with all that out of the way, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a lovely day. Bye!